welcome back to my channel. My name is Vero, and in today's video I'm going to be setting up a new bullet journal for the last 4 months of 2022. Unfortunately, I couldn't fit my whole year into my A4 bullet journal. I just finished setting up my very last spread back in August, and you can check out that video on the link somewhere over here. But because there are only 4 months left of the year, I don't really want to venture into a bigger sized bullet journal just yet. So I'm actually going the other way, and I'm going to be setting up this tiny little bullet journal. It's a B6 from Archer and Olive, and I'm super excited. Just to give you a size comparison, I have done a review of the big A4 bullet journal, so if you're interested in that, you can check that out as well, linked somewhere over here. But just to give you an idea, here are the different sizes. This is an A5 journal, which is the typical size of journal that people use. This is the A4 size that I've been using for most of 2022, and this little one right over here is the journal that I'm going to be using for the rest of 2022. Now there is something even more special about this journal, because not only is it a very small one, it actually has different colored pages. I'm going to be doing my very first ever black paged bullet journal. When I first got this journal, I did not know how I was ever going to use it. So I did already start setting it up and doing different things. So here's a quick look. I wrote my name in the front cover with a silver acrylograph, and I'm just going to add some more details to it. For the rest of 2022, I'm going to go for a consistent theme with different colors, and it's going to be coral and an underwater theme, because as you know, I love the water, I love the ocean, I could spend my whole life there and I would never get bored. So I'm just going to add some little bubbles and some coral around my name, as well as my Instagram handle at VeroBujo, just to this front page, just to give it a little bit of an additional pizzazz, because I think just Vero by itself was a bit boring. The other spreads that I have in this journal were just a acrylograph swatch and playing around with some different fonts. I also had a weekend to-do list, as well as some random things that I was doing in this journal, but because I'm not using them and I don't want to tear out the pages, I'm just going to glue them together so that way I can start afresh on the next page. You can already have a glimpse of my cover page for 2022 part 2, and I'm going to be using a very fun font. It's kind of like a little bit of coral font with the Archer and Olive acrylographs. Now, Archer and Olive acrylographs are a little bit fiddly, I will admit. I do like them a lot. Certain pens are very watery and I have to shake them for a very long time, and I don't always get around to it. So be mindful if you are going for some Archer and Olive acrylographs that you do have to wipe them down, shake them around, and get them flowing before you can start using them and before you get a very nice smooth consistency. So for the fonts for 2022, I'm going to do one of the 20s in a coral capital font, and each of the fatter parts of the letters are going to have these very thin coral stems in them. And then I'm also going to add little lines across just to make the letters come across as actual letters. I'm going to alternate between 6 different acrylograph colors just for the intro pages. And if you're interested in knowing what the colors are that I'm using, I'm just going to list them from top to bottom. So the very first one that's lying down is Blue Willow from the Cool Fall collection. Now, just bear in mind that I'm not entirely sure that these are the right colors. I'm pretty sure, but not 100% sure. Then the color that I'm currently using is the Sky Blue from the Jewel collection. The third one down on my left is the Pool Blue from the Tropical collection. Next is the Mint from the Tropical collection. Then we have the Moss Green from the Jewel collection, which if you're trying to buy that individually, currently it's not available on the Archer and Olive website, but it could be in stock by the time you watch this video. And the last color is the color Teal from the Tropical collection. But again, just bear in mind that these might not actually be the color names. I'm pretty sure they are. I did a bit of a deep dive. I'm only like 90% sure that those are the right names. Here you can see that I'm struggling a little bit with one of the acrylographs because it was drying, so the pen was scratching on the page and the ink wasn't flowing very well. So I had to go back to those tester pen pages, which you get with the acrylograph sets, and you just have to press down on your acrylograph till the ink starts to flow. Now, unfortunately for me, I reckon what the problem was is that I didn't wipe it down properly the last time I used this, so ink has gotten stuck in the nib, meaning that it's very dry and hard to use. I could take it out, soak the nib, and start again, but I'm just gonna go for it and try and press on. It doesn't really matter, and I'm just going to keep going and see what happens. So I finish off with all of the letters for 20, and I'm just going to add some last details here for the Y just to make it look like a Y, and then I'm going to move on to the writing of the other 20 and the 2. I'm going to use a white Archer and Olive acrylograph, and I'm going to go in with a cursive font, and this one is very nice. I think it complements the other block letters very nicely. And then I'm just going to show you a close-up of me writing the word 2 just so you see how how things are going. I will be putting down below the speeds at which I'm writing, just so that you understand that calligraphy is a very slow process, and when I'm showing you things in my journal, it's very fast because I've sped it up. Next, on my cover page, I'm going to add some little details. I'm going to draw these little corals on the side. Now, in hindsight, I think that I should have done my grid spacing cheat sheet on this page, but I had completely forgotten about it, so I'm doing just this little strip of coral, and I'm just going to show you now. Let's go a little bit faster for this coral. I'm starting off with one single color, and it's just this turquoisey green blue color that is the exact same color as my journal, and I just love this color. It's such a nice color. As you can see, I was struggling a little bit with the scratchiness of the Acrylograph. Again, you have to clean them and wipe them down more thoroughly, and if you don't have time for this, then I don't necessarily recommend using them, but that's what it looks like. I also add the same corals with different colors, as you can see right here, and then we're going to move on to my next page. My next spread is going to be my future log. Now, I prefer doing future logs in a calendar form, not where you write out the little calendar and then you write out your plans for the rest of the year, but because this is such a small journal, that's the format that I'm going to have to go with. So again, for the font, this little coral style effect is going to be at the front of the letters and the downstrokes, and I'm going to use a single line for the upstroke for the rest of the letter. These little corals are very rough corals because it's hard to do very small details with these acrylographs because the nib is quite large if you're trying to do details. If you were working on bigger pieces, it wouldn't be a problem. For each little coral, I'm just trying to make sure that not too many sharp edges between the corals, just to make sure it gives that coral effect. Because I only have 6 colors, I'm just going to reuse some of the colors to do my letters and just finish off the words future log so that I can move on to the next steps. My next step is to write out my calendars. So there are 4 months that I'm going to be doing in this journal: September, October, November, and December. And to start off with, I'm going to use this Pentel dual metallic pen to write out Monday to Sunday on the top. I'm going to use this white jelly roll. This size is 0.5, which means it's a thinner size than the acrylographs and as well as the typical jelly rolls, so that I can write out my numbers and make them look a little bit thinner. I'm going to write 1 to 30 for September, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the rest of the months of that year. I'm also going to write September at the top with the Arch and Olive Acrylograph because I do want the font to be a little bit bolder, and I'm just going to use a modern calligraphy style or cursive font for this one as well. As I said, I repeat the same thing for October, November, and December. I absolutely love the Pentel dual metallics. They are so cool. This one is only silver, so there's no actual dual part to it, but there are so many other colors, and they do have like dual colors. So there's like a red and green one and blue and purple one, and they just look really nice. Once I finish writing out all of my calendars, I'm just going to use one of the acrylographs again to draw some lines separating each of the months. I'm using the silver acrylograph, but it really turns white on this particular lighting, and you can't really tell that it's silver, but it is silver, and it is a very nice silver. For the side, I'm going to go in with some more coral because, you know, there's not enough coral on this page, and I'm actually going to do some little borders with the coral so that I can write a little quote inside. Originally, I was thinking maybe I would do like the strip that I did for the very cover page, but I've actually decided to keep it only on the borders and do a quote in the side of my coral. And it's not really a quote, it's just a couple of words that I particularly like. Here's a close-up of me doing the coral. Now again, this particular acrylograph, I clearly should have shaken it more before using it. This happens a lot with acrylographs. They're pens that you really want to use carefully and make sure that you're cleaning them properly, because otherwise they just don't work as smoothly. Some colors you can get away with it, but others you really have to be careful with them. So if you're not really aiming to be patient with them, I would definitely recommend a different brand like the Posca paint pens. I think that they are a little bit more manageable in terms of ink flow, so that's just something to bear in mind. I personally love these colors and love these pens. I'm very excited to use them for the rest of my journal in the Blackout journal because I think they look particularly amazing in the Blackout journal. Once I've done all of my silver corals, I'm going to go in with the turquoise green ones, and these ones just complement the silver corals, and I'm just going to do them on the side. Now, a recurring problem again with these acrylographs is that they just don't flow very well when I'm not paying attention to it. So yeah, that's annoying, but I think they look really cool when they are flowing well. Let's just go for another angle for this coral. You can see that the frame is starting to appear and starting to look kind of cool in my opinion. I'm just going to speed through this so that you can see how I added all of the green corals to it, and then I'll show you what words I chose to write. I go in with a pencil first, and I'm going to write the words ocean child because I feel those two words characterize my personality very well. If I could be an ocean child for the rest of my life, I would, and I really want to live by the ocean, which is not where I'm currently living, so I need to change something very soon. I'm going to just go over that with the Archer and Olive Acrylograph again and just make sure that it's nice and opaque just in case the pen is scratching a little bit. Now we're moving on to my next page, and it is my goals page. For the goals, I'm going to use the same font again, so the little corals, and I'm going to have some decorations down the bottom with some more coral. So let's get into it. I'm going to do out the thin upstrokes first, and then I'm going to go in with my coral. Each of them is just going to be a little bit of a different color. I really enjoyed this font. It's so nice and relaxing to do. I love calligraphy, I really do. I wish I did it a little bit more often instead of just doing this stock standard brush calligraphy or cursive fonts, because these are so much fun and I just don't do it very often. So we've just sped through that one, and I'm going to now put in some coral at the bottom. I'm just going to vary the corals between different colors and leaving them either blank in the middle or filling them in. Corals that I draw are very smooth, and you just do one continuous line, making sure that none of the stems of your coral are too big compared to any of the other stems. For this one, I am going to color it in because this color is a color that needs to be standing out a lot because it's so vibrant and it's such a pretty color. I decided to alternate the different corals that I was going to use. So this next coral is this circular stacks on top of each other. I imagine it would look like an ice cream. So you start with one ice cream scoop, then you just like layer the ice cream scoops up as you go, and then when you get closer towards the top, you start making the ice cream scoops a little bit thinner just so that they're not going to not topple over. That's the idea of how you draw this particular coral, and I think it looks really effective. Because I liked that particular coral so much, I decided to repeat it with this light blue, and I'm just going to do that right next to the other one, and I'm just going to space the corals across the page so that they're not overlapping in a symmetrical way and that they're just kind of in a random order, because I really want it to stand out and I really want it to look nice and funky. Here we have another angle, and I'm just going to go over some of the other ones just to make sure that it's all overlapping nicely and it looks put together. I'm not going to color this one in, I think, because I think, a little bit of change and a variation in these corals there's no harm done. Then I go in with the same ice cream scoop coral with the light blue. So this particular light blue is very liquid. I should be shaking it a lot more, which you can see like the opacity comes a little bit better here. But again, this one just never works for me, this particular color. It's quite stubborn with me. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I think I have to shake it more, or I don't know. The pigment is probably all stuck to the bottom of this pen. Anyway, moving on. I go in with a silver coral over here next to the other ones on the right. And I do have to go over it a couple of times just because, again, the scratchiness. I wish this didn't happen. I wish I had more patience and I wasn't so busy all the time, but I have no patience. So that's why they're not being used very well. Sorry, Archer and Olive Acrylographs. And my very last coral is going to be a white one, and it's just going to go straight in the middle like so, and I think this one is the one that stands out the most because it is very, very pretty and very, very bright. I totally mucked up my colors. I couldn't see them properly. This is the one that I just drew on was silver. Anyway, I did some bubbles as well. So the color before that, I'm not sure what that color was, but it wasn't silver. Anyway, let's move on. The next part that I'm going to do is my grid spacing cheat sheet. This one is just going to be very simple. I'm going to write 1 down to the bottom for the different numbers. I'm just going to count 1 to however many rows are on this page. I'm going to do the same thing horizontally and vertically. So I have 22 columns and I have 32 rows. I'm going to also draw some lines to divide my page in 3, as well as lines to divide my page in 4. I'm going to use an acrylograph just to show the different segments for this. At the top, I write 10. So 10 is the number of squares in each of the boxes to show 3 boxes. So if I want to do 3 boxes down, I have to count 10 squares for each of them and then leave 1 square blank, and then 10, and then blank, and then 10. And if I wanted to do 4 squares, I would have to do 7 squares. And if I wanted to do 5 squares, I would have to do 5 squares for each of the 5 square boxes. Oh, and just in case you were wondering, if you do make mistakes in a blackout journal, as you just saw me do right there is a way to fix it, and it is just using a black acrylograph. This works very, very well because it's black on black. So instead of having whiteout, you can just use a blackout. I repeat the same thing horizontally. So 3 is going to be 7, and actually it's 7, 7, 6 because the page is too small. And for the 4 boxes across, it would be 5, 5, and 4. So if that's fun, then I'm just going to write grid spacing next to it with the acrylograph, and I'm going to leave myself a little bit of space just around there, just in case I want to add in some more grid boxes that I haven't thought of yet, because I haven't thought of everything, obviously. And that is what my journal setup is going to look like. The rest of the pages that I had set up for 2022 are still in my A4 journal, so I'm not going to repeat them in this journal. And if you're interested in seeing what those particular spreads look like, you can click on my 2022 part 1 video where I set up my original bullet journal, because I am going to continue using the beginning of that journal. So this journal is going to be complementing my first bullet journal. And finally, we are now at the flip through for this tiny little bullet journal. I'm so happy with how it all turned out. We have my name page. Now I filmed this before I added all the little details, so sorry about that. We have some calligraphy practice over here. We have my cover page for 2022 part 2. Then we have my future log for the last 4 months of the year with the words Ocean Child on the side. We have my goals page for the last quarter, my grid spacing cheat sheet, and that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed seeing my little setup of my little tiny journal. I'm very excited to use it for the rest of the year. And whilst I've just set up the beginning spreads, you can come back next week to see me set up for September. Here is a little sneak peek of my cover page, and this is all you're going to get. See you next week for another video. Bye bye.